Well, welcome back to the show, everyone. I am super excited because it's been a hot minute since I've had a guest on my show. But I'm honored today to be joined here by Christina Whiteley, and I'll intro her in just a moment. First, I just want to remind you guys, first of all, thank you for tuning in, listening to my show. And if this show brings you value, please, 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 the way you can return the favor is just to share it with somebody that you love or know or think would find value in this show. And please remember to subscribe so you get notified for all future episodes. So let me just dive right into this episode because we have a very bold, courageous businesswoman with us today, and I'll just intro her so you guys know her background. So Christina is a born entrepreneur and strong advocate, very strong, by the way, for building business that aligns with purpose, which the world really needs right now. As a freedom-driven mother who has continually evolved her own business to reflect her values and beliefs, always striving to teach others how to achieve success and build impactful businesses while reducing work hours so they can spend more time with their family raising their kids. For several years, Christina successfully owned and operated a salon, an on-site wedding business where she enjoyed working with her clients. However, she felt a deep desire to make a bigger impact and empower others in a more profound way. Maybe you can resonate with that. When her daughter was born, she embarked on a journey to become an expert in business strategy, online marketing, and leadership. And so now Christina's mission is to teach individuals like myself and like you how to find freedom and create their dream lifestyle by sharing creative, customized business strategies that allow them to work intentionally and focus on their goals. Originally from Vancouver Island, Canada, actually, Canada. Christina and her family currently reside in Cabo San Lucas, Mexico, which is the first thing I want to talk about today. Her influence extends beyond her teaching platform as she actively shares valuable business building ideas and inspiration on podcasts, speaking engagements, and for all her channels on social media. And her ultimate goal is to empower others to create multiple streams of income, which allow them to live outside of a system designed to keep them broke, to pursue their passions and live a fulfilling life that inspires their children, makes them proud, and I would add to that, leave a legacy. Under her brand, Life Transformed, Christina runs an exclusive mastermind program called the Six-Figure Profit Plan. And this program assists entrepreneurs in building and breaking through the six-figure mark in their business while honing in on their skills, confidently presenting their brands and implementing systems that generate income without leading to burnout. Christina's true passion lies in helping entrepreneurs live a life beyond the balance that most people seek and empowering them to make more money, build a purpose-centered business that inspires and fulfills them, all while creating the freedom they deserve to live life on their terms. Christina, welcome. It's been a long time coming. And thank you so much for joining me on Ignite the Spark Within today.
Thank you so much for having me. Every time I hear that read back to me, it brings tears to my eyes because I am so grateful for what I get to do and how I get to help people.
I can see that. And I actually wanted to start with that authenticity and the what I would define as walking the walk and how you lead so boldly and so passionately. Like you read these words and sometimes people have their copy on their website and it sounds really great. But oftentimes you see the gaps in how they present themselves and they're leading in their own lives. And I would say, you guys, I mean, pause or just at the end, if you go follow Christina, you will see it all over everything that she does. And that may your bio might actually be undercutting you a little bit because you are bold. You are very bold. And I think that's one of the things that has connected us so strongly through a strange link of events. I don't even know how we got connected.
Yeah, I know.
But I actually want to start, Christina, with something that I'm more curious on because we have in common, and that's to talk about your move to Mexico because that was a bold move and a big one. And I know how. I mean, gosh, I just moved from Illinois to Arizona, and that was a rough. It's
Yeah.
hard to move, especially with a family, and then let alone cross country. So please tell me about that. Like, what sparked it, and when? How long have you been living there?
Okay, so full disclosure, we're taking the gloves off. We're just having a conversation. I wear my heart on my sleeve. And I honestly, when it came to moving down here, I didn't feel like I had an option. As crazy as that sounds, I didn't feel like I had an option. And so let's like go back a couple of years. We left Canada in October of 2021. We were in the thick of COVID and lockdowns and division between family and friends and community. And my husband and I, so clearly, I'm so grateful for him and glad that we're on the same page, but we saw so clearly what was happening, but others didn't. And we, quietly made our stand, and it wasn't what everyone else was doing. We were defying what the norm was and put in this position where we had now become second-class citizens in our home country. And the funny thing is, we say we'd rather be second-class citizens in a country that we don't live in than be, put up with being a second-class citizen in our own country. And I'd also gone through a couple of miscarriages in 2021. We were trying to have another baby, and I think it was because of stress, really. Like what it came down to was like how stressful that time was. And my husband recognized that in me. It was August of 2021. My sister and I were actually pregnant at the same time, and we're supposed to have kids 3 days apart. And she had a baby. His brother got married. Nobody wanted to be around us because they didn't think it was safe to be around us because we chose to be unvaccinated. And like, again, I'm just fully transparent here. I don't care if people decided to do that or not. It should be completely your choice. And we were trying to have a baby, and I didn't know the long-term effects of that. And now, 2 years later, we look at how many people had miscarriages and the effects on fertility and all those things now. And so I know that I made the right choice at the time, but it was not the popular choice. And, even down to having conversations with my 90-year-old grandmother, and she's like, am I ever going to get to see you again? And I said, well, I'm healthy, and that's completely up to you. The propaganda just scared the crap out of people. And in the beginning, by the way, I was one of those people. Like, I was one of those people that, like, my husband went to the grocery store. We left all the groceries on the patio outside for 12 hours. And
wow.
we were those people that were like, we don't know what we're dealing with here. But as we started to gather information, and by the way, the propaganda in Canada, I think, was way stronger than it was in the US.
Really?
And yeah, it was crazy.
I would have thought the opposite, actually.
Well, the difference is Canadians government, it's the national government overrides all the provinces, whereas the US is the opposite. Your states have more power, governing power, than the national government, right?
Sure.
So, down to the detail of at Thanksgiving, they were saying, like, make sure that people are showing you their vaccine cards. And if you have family members that are not vaccinated, like, don't have them over. Like, there were ads on TV. It was wild. It was so wild. And so my mental health really struggled back then. And, I'd been somebody that had been doing personal development for 20 plus years. I was coaching people in business. I've always been a really strong-minded person. And now I was on the lower end of discrimination. And I'm very grateful, actually. I know this sounds crazy, but I'm grateful for that experience because now I know what it feels like. I'm also grateful for the experience that it is to be an immigrant, because now I have a lot more empathy and compassion for them as well. But after the miscarriages, I remember being in my mom's backyard. It was August in my hometown, my small hometown, and I just started bawling. And I was like, I am not okay. I don't know what's going on. I don't know how to fix this. And I've had enough. I've had enough of it all. And I can't handle this anymore. It's wrong. What is going on here is wrong. And then it was a couple months later that my daughter, she went into kindergarten, and we asked her, do you want to go to private school or do you want to go to French immersion? She wanted to learn French. And so we put her in French immersion. And they're trying to teach these kids a different language with masks on, and they want the kids to wear masks. And she was 5. And I was like, this is ridiculous. Like, we all know that the mask doesn't actually work. But this propaganda and everything was like, it was so ridiculous. And the defining factor, we knew that we were going to pull her from school. And so many people have criticized me online when I said I pulled my daughter from school because of the program. And they've said, oh, why? Because you don't want her to learn about, genders and this and that. Well, no, not at her age. I definitely do not. Like number one, Soji comes into place, in grade 1, grade 2 up there. Like they're asking, what do you think your gender is in kindergarten?
Yeah.
Like why are we even focusing on that? And I just had a conversation with a mom like 2 minutes ago. I got off the phone, and her son is in grade 5. And they're asking the same questions to him, and the teachers refuse to call him a him. There, right? Like all of this crazy language. No wonder these kids have anxiety. This is their English teacher changing the dictionary. And anyways, that is a whole
Yes.
other tangent I could go down, but that was not actually the defining factor. The defining factor of pulling her from school is that she went to school on Truth and Reconciliation Day, which is a day that they deemed a remembrance of the residential schools where natives were taken from their families and put into Catholic schools, and they were abused, and all this stuff happened, and there was all this propaganda around that as well. And they had an elder come in and do a ceremony at her school. Sorry, this is very detailed.
I'm actually really interested. I'm really interested because I'm like, there's now an unfolding of questions that I have in my brain of like different channels to go down with this. This is
But it
perfect.
was, so they have this elder come in who was obviously traumatized, speak to the entire school, including my daughter in kindergarten, who does not have context about residential schools and kids being taken. And so I picked my happy-go-lucky kid up who always wants to play on the playground after school. I pick her up and she's visibly upset. I was like, do you want to play outside today? She's like, no. And I was like, what happened? She's like, nothing. And we get in the Jeep and I turn around and I said, what happened today? What is going on? And she said, Mom, did you know that kids were taken from school and they never got to see their parents again? They never saw them again. And she was terrified that she was going to be taken from school. It took me 2 weeks to convince her that she was safe there.
Oh
2 weeks.
my gosh.
And then when you actually started reading the Emergency Act and when you started reading what they were changing in the, I don't even know how to say this. Basically, they said they took away parents' rights and there was no age of consent anymore. So if you sent your kids to school, they could decide medically what to do with your children and what was deemed necessary for the class. And so I was like, none of this is anything that I want to have in my life, in my family, my daughter at this age when she's so malleable and having this influence in her life. So we both decided that we were going to pull her from school. And then they decided that on the 30th of October, they were going to close the borders to Canadians, and they were not allowed to leave the country. They were not allowed to fly within the country if they did not comply and get vaccinated. And I just looked at my husband and I said, none of this is okay. We booked tickets that day for 2 days before they closed the border. And we packed up our house. We packed up 7 suitcases. And one of those was filled with Christmas presents. And we came to Mexico. I had an incentive trip that we weren't going to come on that I had earned through my company that was free. And we went to that incentive trip, and then we got a couple of Airbnbs, and we said we'd figure it out. We'll be gone 3 to 6 months. And 2 months in, we burned the boats, we sold the house, and we decided that we were going to live here.
Wow. Okay. I did not know about all of that.
Now you do.
Well, I love that because in a way you really you had all the odds stacked against you in a way. Family wasn't supporting you, people weren't supporting you. It's kind of crazy to hear about. What's more crazy to me is like, what do you think the difference is between people like you and like I who are like, oh my God, what is happening right now? Like, this is does anybody not see this? Between the people that are like, well, we'll just kind of go through the motions and follow suit.
And I've always said that to my husband. I'm just like, how we went through the same propaganda in school. We are exposed to the same media. What makes us different? And I think entrepreneurs and people that have business brains, entrepreneur-minded people tend to think differently than people that are employed by others, because we've been taught to be employees. We've been taught to follow the rules. We've been taught that the government's going to keep us safe. We've been taught all these things, but as an entrepreneur, you are a bit more of a risk taker. You have a lot more critical thinking that has to go on so that you can get ahead of things, right? There's a lot of stuff that most entrepreneurs do differently than if you were an employee. And so maybe that's a piece of it. Maybe it was because 8 years previous to that, I'd had some really big health issues and I couldn't get any answers from the doctors. And I think a lot of people that go into and deep dive into health and the importance of that realize that our medical system is stacked against us and that people just want to band-aid it with this pharmaceutical, and that pharmaceutical comes with a whole bunch of different problems. And so as we went and deep dived into that and educated ourselves and realized the importance of food and organic and supplementation and all of these things, and that it was actually the pharmaceuticals and the things that had made us sick in the first place, and the food that we were eating that was highly processed, even though it was gluten-free or whatever the heck it was, right? So like at some point you hit a roadblock in your life where the veil comes up and you can't go back to just blindly trusting anymore, because the people that are supposed to help you don't.
Yes, yes. And as you're talking about this, I'm kind of like realizing that it wasn't actually the moment that all of this ignited. It was like everybody was kind of being groomed one way or the other way before all of this happened, in both the compliance side and the non-compliant side, right? And I find the commonalities between people, we have the same values. Number one being freedom. We have similar morals, and I believe that you have like a moral grounding within you. We could talk about that too. And then there's a practice of health. There's a practice of health. And I think that with that practice of health comes an automatic sort of connection or awareness or clarity of thinking that sets us apart from the people who are um, depressed and sedentary and overweight and unhealthy. And I feel like that's by design, right? I feel like it is by design, in which bring the health of the body down and the mind comes down with it. And if the mind comes down, the spirit comes down. So it's like an attack on all three pillars. And now we take it to the next level with this gender crisis, which is just an identity crisis, in my opinion. And if you attack the identity and mutilate the body too, it's just like it's spiritual warfare is what it is. And I know that you see that, and I'm kind of curious about that for you, and if what your spiritual journey or process or connection was like before all of that, and how it kind of evolved or deepened through the process of COVID, because I know many people did deepen. Well, they were provoked during COVID. I don't know if it got deep or not.
Yeah, fair enough. And that's actually a really great way to say it, and something that we should discuss too, because a lot of people got mad. They got really mad about things. And I thought, hey, this is actually an opportunity of growth to give people grace for their own growth, right? Like there's nothing I can do or say that is going to change your mind, but it's set for act as an example, and I think it was a pretty rude awakening and big awakening when we left the country, not only for family and friends, but it was like hard for them because they knew something wasn't right, but they couldn't put their finger on it. And what really made me passionate about it was raising my daughter and now my son. Is like these young minds are the generation of the future. Like they're the ones that are going to run things. And we have to infuse these strong family values, which I truly believe not only are we an attack spiritually, but it's an attack on our family. It's an attack on like reproduction and holding people close and all of those things, right? And so there's this awareness for people that have committed to personal growth that I think if you have a fixed mindset and you think this is just how things are, you don't have this awareness unless you've chosen the hard route, you've chosen growth. And what do they say? Weak men create good times create
strong men create good times. Good times create weak men create hard times
that's
create
right.
Strong men. Yes.
That's right. So it's just this cycle, right? And so in my family, I realized, hey, like I didn't want to live life this way. And there was some generational trauma there, how I was raised. I didn't really particularly like some of my negative aspects of who I was. And that's, by the way, still a practice, we're not perfect, but I was willing to do the work. I was willing to do the trauma work so I didn't pass it on to my kids. And there is, it comes down to one of you that is going to break the chains on that curse and change it for your kids and be the one that makes their life easier so they don't have to go through it. And I wanted to be that person, and it wasn't easy. None of this was easy, right? But I think when you choose hard and you choose to overcome, not only do you live a more peaceful, like inner peaceful life, you also get a lot more joy in life,
And
and you get to
fulfillment.
do and fulfillment. That's right. That's right. And so, there was a few moments, I've definitely had my fair share. Like, I was bullied as a kid. I live with PTSD. I have a counselor on speed dial who helped me with EMDR and reprogramming my neural pathways. I mentioned in a previous conversation that my husband and I have used ayahuasca as a tool, and really like come to terms with who we are in our soul and as our true being of just compassion and love for all, and that we've got a personality put on top of that to learn the life lessons that this lifetime is meant to learn,
Yeah.
right? And so how do you want to move through that? Do you want to be consciously aware of that, or do you want it to be hard and be unconscious and really truly struggle and beat yourself up and go through all the motions, or just take everything with a grain of salt and learn and move forward and be the best version of yourself and make an impact?
Yeah, and it's like that notorious saying, choose your hard,
Yeah.
choose your heart. And it's funny that you're saying all of this because in the very beginning, I feel like there are certain and I don't know how you feel about this. Maybe you agree, maybe you disagree. But I do feel like there are certain people that were specifically born for this time, in order to, let's get spiritual with it, in order to fulfill their life's dharma or their soul's dharma. And
Hmm.
I believe I'm one of those people. And I believe people who have risen up in this way, yourself included, I think that may be like, if we're talking like way behind the veil, that what's operating beyond our conscious awareness, it's really that is that we were actually created for this time, and all of the hardships that led up to that created a desire for that healing, so that when the time sparked, we already had a desire and a momentum going into that to want to do the work. Like we talk about free will, and you said I didn't have a choice. And I love that you said that, because it was like this move out here to Arizona was the same thing for me. And so many things along the way ever since COVID have been the same thing for me. They have been hard decisions, the hardest decisions I've ever had to do. But in a way, it's like your soul knows it, and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm on this train wreck and I have to ride it because I'm going and it's going. And I do have an option, but I don't have a choice. And I feel
Yeah.
like when you're so mission driven like yourself, that's often the case where you're like, oh crap, I know what I have to do. It's like that weird moment where you're like, shit, I'm gonna
Yeah.
have to do this. I'm gonna have to jump. And there's
Yeah.
no
And
parachute right now.
And you were born for such a time as this. Like, I constantly remind myself, oh my God, I can't believe my soul signed up for this.
Yes.
Like, like I signed up for this. I signed up to be a business freedom leader. I signed up to be a person that maybe had disagreements with people. I signed up to be the person that was going to do the healing. But I look at my
Yeah.
children, I know that she's had multiple lives. I know that she's here to do something great. I know my son is here to do the same thing. I see that spark in their eyes, right? Like the indigo children, right? And
Yeah.
so I know that if I don't fully realize myself, that I'm not going to give them the environment where they need to grow into the people that they need to be, because for so long I thought something was wrong with me. I was bullied as a kid. I was told to be quiet. I was always too loud, all of these things, right? And I just thought, what's wrong with me? And I'm like, no,
Yeah.
it's everything that's right in me. And it wasn't nurtured because it wasn't what was common. And I always knew that piece of me, like you said, you always knew, like as a light worker, you always knew that piece, that spark was there, and it's pulling you and pulling you and pulling you. And finally, I had this conversation with my grandmother. She's now 95, totally coherent, like she's great. And
Wow.
she's had this awakening over the last 5 years. Actually, it's been really fascinating to have these conversations with her. So she's always said to me, Christina, I don't know where you get your drive. Like, all of my family's like, you work too hard, you do too much. And I'm like, I was made to be here. I was made to be a leader. I'm here because I need to have a voice. I need to help people have their voice, right? And so finally, about 6 months ago, we had this conversation, and I said, Grandma, it's like, for all intents and purposes, it's my intuition. It's the voice of the Holy Spirit that is working through me.
Yes.
It is calling me to do this. I cannot turn it off.
Yep.
I don't know how to turn it off. In everything that I do, I cannot turn it off. And this is who I am. And so it's not work. It's just who I am. It's how I show up.
Oh my gosh. I love, love, love that you just said that. I have spent so many nights um within this same conversation thinking the same thing, that there's something wrong with me, even though I know there's not anything wrong with me. It's actually what's right with me, where I say to myself, I don't know why, I just can't turn it off. I just can't turn it off. And I've been crying at times because, like, before you kind of fully accept and fully embrace, we have this egoic desire to want to be accepted by others and fit into this thing that we're in. um we could talk about that a whole other time. And so I knew that I didn't and I couldn't, even though I would try. Why can't I be normal? Why can't I just, I don't have any desire to go do the things that normal people my age are doing. I don't have it in me, and yet I just can't turn this off. I can't stop it. And so I love that you say that. Was there ever a time for you during this transitionary process that you had to go into a season of like solitude or reflection or reframing, or just what's the word I'm looking for? Assessment.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think and at
And I'm
first I
so
didn't give
sorry.
myself.
I'm so
Yeah,
sorry. I
go ahead.
just want to like add to that, because business is very like grounded. It's very earthy. It's very 3D. Yet you are so spiritual. So how did you find, did that morph over time, or were you like, oh, I found the spiritual purpose in this business thing?
Well, this conversation is so refreshing to me because it's not how I speak most days. The intention is always there, and I speak about business. I also went through this phase of burnout because I thought that it was what I had to do instead of taking that break and that time. And, actually reading
Yeah.
Matthew McConaughey's Green Lights book, when he could put aside millions and millions of dollars because he didn't feel in alignment with what he was doing, I was like, why can't I put aside 100 grand? Like, like,
Yes.
why can't I just say no to that and just take a minute to refocus? And that's really what this life is about, right? It's like getting a balcony perspective of your life, taking a little bit of a break, readjusting course. And so yes, there has been times where I've worked until burnout, and then I had a mentor of mine say, okay, you haven't been taught the tools to be able to move through this and assess it properly. So she gave me those tools. And then, the move to Mexico was as, okay, here's a balcony view of our lives here. How do we want it to look now? How do we want it to look moving forward? Like this conscious creation that
Yeah.
so often people don't do because it's too scary or there's too much risk. And it's having, like, thank God I have a partner that is in it with me, that we can do it together and we have each other for support and do it for our family. But it
Mm.
was like, okay, how are we going to evaluate this? And then it just came again with the birth of my son. I was like, am I going down the right path? Is this what I want? How do I want the big picture to be? Do I want to be doing this? Do I want to be doing this? What opportunities are out there? Please come and show me. Bring them to me. If the right opportunity is here, who should I be aligning with? What is my bigger mission here? Right? And then all of this like mental wellness stuff came into place. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is where it is. This is how I can help the masses as opposed to a smaller group of people, and still honoring those group of people. But hey, let's like expand and expand and expand again. But that takes downtime and reflection
Yeah.
and creativity and play. All of those things happen. Like I get my best ideas when I'm on date night or when I'm on vacation. And I'm like,
Yes.
oh my God, this is it.
It's that fine balance of creating the space for those ideas to come in, and then implementing them and putting them into action. I have a regurgitation board on my phone, where if anything comes in, because usually they'll come in at the most like inappropriate, or times when I can't do anything about it. So I'm like, I gotta, do that. And then you kind of like flow that way. But it's a constant reflection and assessment, and then inviting in the direction, from, like you said, from Holy Spirit. And that to me is the choice of what frequency you're tuning into. Because if I'm tuning into who's aligned with me, who's coming in, bring in the people, bring in the resources, then I'm like expanding myself. Forget like what I know about resources, bring in whatever form that means, right? Because sometimes it's money, sometimes it's people, sometimes it's ideas, sometimes it's places. And I do love that you have a partner. That's so absolutely vital, to have a partner who is on the same page with the growth with you, that you can talk about these things um out loud. And I mean, I know this and you said it, but there's obviously a much deeper spiritual mission underneath the layer of what you're putting out there to the public. And but at the same time, I think people do know that, Christina. People know that, and that's why they're gravitated to you. Um, and I just want to say also thank you for doing what you do and for saying what you said about play and rest. Because
Mhm.
one of the things I was curious about is how you find the balance between mother, wife, business owner, social media, like all the time. I'm like, how the F is this woman doing this?
It's a different energy. It's a different vibration, right?
Yeah.
It's a higher vibration. And I've just learned to have a flow with it, right? Like my business involves my business efforts also flow into my life, and how I create social media is my voice, right? And it's how I bring people in. And I'll give you an example. We went to New York City recently and did a marketing thing for business. We explored the city. It's one of my favorite cities in the world. The energy there is so fun, and we got to bring my daughter there and my son, and we had all this city energy, and then we visited with some old friends that we caught up with, and then we took 3 days and had this beautiful, peaceful little cabin on the river where we could canoe and go fishing and be quiet, right, and rest. And then we go off to a wedding, and things are wild and crazy, and see everybody again, and it's wonderful. But all the while, I'm still doing business. I'm still, showing up business coaching on the days that I'm supposed to. I'm still reaching out to people and creating conversations and seeing how I can serve them and how I can support them. And it's just like, it's all evolved into this flow state of like, and you hear people talk about that. It's still work, right? Like there's no like wishing and hoping and praying. You get who you are in life, right? Like you get reflected back on you who you are. It's not like, oh, I meditated on this and $1 million showed up.
Right,
No, there's
right.
work that goes behind that. But when you love that work, when you love who you work with, when you flow into it and you work in your wheelhouse and you do what you love and you let everything else go, that's where the magic happens. And so
Yeah.
it all becomes doable.
This is why this concept of social media is such a dichotomy for me, because it's like obviously the way for us to reach more people and get our voice out there and these types of things. But it's also a place where there's so much comparison, Christina, and that
Amen.
comparison kills the individual path of the person who's walking their own path, right? Their own soul's
Sure.
journey and their mission and their purpose. And I think that that on one hand, social media has created an opportunity for people to really explore themselves, and in another way it has kind of suppressed that or been at odds with that. So it's a hard balance to find. I recognize that, but purpose is number one, because if we don't know what that is, then we can't possibly find work that we know how to do. At the same time, though, I don't think everybody's born to be an entrepreneur.
No, they're not. Actually, only 7 to 8% of the population are created to be entrepreneurs, and only 1% of those 7 or 8% make it to $1 million earnings. So not
Wow.
yeah, it's a very low number. However, those are the people that I want to spend time with. Those are the people that I truly want to help find their freedom through entrepreneurship. And you said something really important, because you create your social media, you create your algorithm, you decide who you're friends with, who you're not friends with,
Yes.
right? So when I go on social media, it is enlightening, it is positive. If it's not, I delete them or I block them, and they're
Yes.
not part of my view. Now, this works both ways, because you can be in an echo chamber of things, and not see things that maybe you should see to see different perspectives. So I constantly seek relationships or conversations that will show me a different perspective that are maybe opposite to my belief system, so that I can understand more. But
Mm.
one of the things, I'm going to give you this as a tip, because it's a big one and it changed everything for me. I used to scroll through social media comparing myself and saying, oh, look at this $1 million earner. Oh, look at she's with her kids. Oh, this, oh, this, oh, this. But then I get them in my inbox and they're like, Christina, I don't have the freedom you have. This is not the life that I thought I was building. Like, what am I going to do? And I'm like, okay, let's have a bigger conversation around that. But the thing that I learned, and this is huge, when you can do this will change everything on social media. Instead of comparing, I study.
Yeah.
I go after the strongest business women, the people that are doing what I would like to do in the world, the impact that I'm trying to make, and I study them, and I'm like, what are they doing well? What can
Yep.
I do well? How can I take that and make it my own? What questions are people asking in the comments? How can I answer that in my content? What are the things that are not working for them?
How are they
Oh, they touched this
engaging?
subject. Right?
I'll
And
tell
so
you,
many people out there just trying to make money, whereas I'm like, no, I want to be in the trenches with you. I want to be on the phone with you and help you work through those challenges together, because I know if you have that, you'll move forward a lot faster.
yeah. I'll tell you a little story. I used to there was a part of me that obviously needed attention and healing because I used to hate Mel Robbins. I used to be like, oh, I don't like Mel Robbins, I'm not going to follow her and these types of things. But I came to realize, obviously through healing, that I was jealous of her. I was jealous of her
Mhm.
because her and I are very similar. I love how she speaks the truth. I love how she speaks in general. I love how she presents herself. She's so engaging. She's so humble and personable. And as soon as I was able to acknowledge and recognize that, I was like, first of all, I'm a huge Mel Robbins fan. And I also, like you said, I'm modeling. At the same time, like, right, this is why it's so important to be conscious in everything that we do, though, because most people, Christina, don't do this, right? They're not conscious enough to be able to. I'd like to just like paint a picture. It's kind of like hover above the water and see what's in the water, right? A lot of people they
Yes.
just go straight in, and
Yep.
then they can lose themselves in that process. But it takes a fine actually it takes a deep knowing of oneself to be able to engage with social media in that way, to use it the way that you're speaking of it. I'm assuming that that's what you help people do.
Yeah, and to find the confidence in having a voice, because you realize that there will be people that no matter what you do will not like you. There will be people that you have helped that will stab you in the back. There will be people that you love that will let you go,
Oh, you're preaching to
right?
me right now.
It's hard. It's so hard. And you realize that at higher levels of business, this happens more often. You face more adversity. And, you were just talking about some of the lessons that you learned. And, I've been hurt by people like many of us, right? We've been hurt. And whenever I'm hurt by somebody, you know what it comes down to? It takes me 2 days to process it. And then I'm like, I'm just mad at myself for letting that kind of person into my life,
That
for letting,
bingo.
right? I'm just like,
Bingo.
oh, it's my fault. That's why I'm so mad.
Do you ever notice, because I'm like, now you're hitting something very personal for me, because I thought that I was the only. I'm like, what the heck is going on? Why does this keep happening? Am there's something wrong with me, right? The backstabbing, the stealing, the people who flip on you like a switch, like all of a sudden for one moment you're their hero, which I'm like,
Yeah.
now that's like a trigger for me. I'm like, please don't make me your hero because I
You
know
know where this is
I
going.
know where this is going. I'll eventually be the villain, so I'm just like,
Yeah.
let's run this out. But have you found that you get intuition, like you know early on, right? Do you ever like get those vibes? You're like, oh, this is gonna be one of those.
Yeah, and you know what? I've had to learn the lesson over time, because I have a big heart, much like you, and I've had to learn the lesson over time that keeps kicking me in the butt until you get kicked hard enough, that you can't save those people. You're like, I'm going to be able to help them. It's like that bad boyfriend, right? That bad boyfriend that you're like, I will change his ways. He's cheated on everybody except he won't cheat on me
Yes,
because
yes,
I'm
yes,
amazing,
yes,
right? Like I'll be the stupid like hero complex or savior complex that
yeah.
they call it.
I'm
I'm
like,
like, I will not be your hero. Like you have to be your own hero. Like this is not,
absolutely.
And so when I see people and see behavior that is not ideal, I realize that unless they're coming to me and asking to change that behavior, that I'm never going to be able to change it, right? And I've learned that lesson in a very hurtful, hard way a few times now. And sometimes it's residual because you've grown as a person over the last 2, 3, 4 years, and there's still some people that hang on
Yeah.
and think that they know you the way that you used to be,
Yes.
or they haven't grown at the same time. And sometimes it's necessary to part ways. It's necessary to go down different paths. And as you grow, I always leave the door open for people to come back in, but they also have to own it and take their own journey in growth, and for us to be able to meet out down the other path, right? And I think that so often we are so hopeful, and people like us see the best in others and we want the best for them, but we can't want it more than they want it for
Yeah.
themselves. And you can only offer so many solutions. And if people don't do what you are encouraging them to do because you know that it will help them, you can't keep offering the same advice. Stop giving them advice.
Yeah.
Stop being there. Stop coaching them. Stop whatever it is. Break off the relationship, because I want to tell you, it ends badly for you.
Yeah. Always. Yeah. Yes. Yes. I've had this so many times, Christina, too. And like you, I finally am getting to a place where I'm like, okay, enough of these lessons, right? Like I'm going to start shifting what I'm doing to create these patterns. But what I do, you were like, oh, I can save them. I can save them. I find excuses, right? And I'll make excuses for myself, as in like, well, I know they're gonna do what they're gonna do. I can tell. I know my intuition is like 99.99% right 100% of the time. So I disregard oopsie daisy and I say, well, remember that this is just a reflection of you, not them. And they're going to learn the lessons and it's like this whole thing that I concoct in my head, and it helps nobody. It only leaves me hurt. And then, and then upset, like, why do I keep doing this? And why don't I just stop
Yeah.
sharing my light with people? Right.
Well, it's interesting because, again, I have a really great mentor and she's now a friend. And she's like, Christina, as soon as you stop putting up with this crap, you won't get it anymore. Like, you get what you tolerate.
Yeah.
And so when you keep solving these low level problems,
Yeah.
you never get to operate up here. She's like, the air is clearer up here. There is no competition up here. The people are amazing. They would never treat you this way because they're all amazing. So stop dealing with this so you can be up here with us.
But see, even that requires healing.
Yes.
Because
Yes, it does.
there are so many. When I hear that, I think of, obviously I'm a hypnotherapist, so I'm always looking for like the core problems of what could be. When I hear that, I hear if you're not doing that, or if I'm not doing that, it means that there is a either self-worth problem, that I deserve to be up there, or I've been up there and I'm like, now what? I don't have any problems to solve, right? Because everything's, although at the same time, that's not true either, because once you go up here, you're dealing with higher level problems. Like, we should be actually seeking bigger, harder problems. And actually, we
Yes.
talked about this when I was on your show, when I was on that television show. I finally realized, I was like, yes, awful at the same time, because I was finally dealing with some like big problems and big decisions. And you know that you've elevated or graduated to some other place when your decisions are no longer good and bad, between good and bad, because that's kind of easy to do, right? Choose the good
Yeah.
decision. But when it's a decision between good and better or
Yeah.
best,
Yeah.
and I was faced with a decision like that, right? To stand up for integrity and my value and my work, in a moment when I could have lost out on the biggest opportunity of my life. And then you said something else earlier that was from the book Green Lights, and how he passed up $1 million deal, and you're like, then why can't I pass up 100K? And the same thing with me. It's like alignment. Now that I've learned these lessons the hard way, going into misaligned collaborations or projects or events always ends badly. And it's like, what's the cost, right? Am I going to turn down 100K but save my integrity and my image and the rest of my business and feel good about it? Or am I going to go after the money? Right.
Yeah, absolutely. It comes down to that every time. And especially when you're first starting business and the money is important, right? The money, that 100K may be like your mortgage for the year or whatever it is, right? Like it's really important. But when it comes down to your integrity and what you have to live with in the end, and the people that you do business with, right? Like, choosing who you do business with really, really matters. And, it's been interesting because I have a network marketing background. And so people are brought into your life that you didn't bring into your life, that your team brings into your life. And all of a sudden you have this interesting dynamic and you have to uphold a certain culture. And you're like, whoa, 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 wait a second. This is not what I signed up for with certain people. And you've got to create boundaries. And I think, as women, we try and please everybody. We try and help everybody. We're nurturers. But in the end, it crushes business if we don't actually uphold this standard of integrity and respect and basically compassion for everybody that's here, but we've got to do what's best for business in the same sense. That doesn't mean that it doesn't tie into our spirituality and how we help people. It doesn't mean that it's not tying into our greater good.
I think it means that even more. And I think that in a
Yes.
way, and then I just, I'll kind of wrap us around here and ask you one last question. But I think that in a way, the way that women are designed on an energetic and a spiritual level allows us to be more powerful, because we have to hold the balance between the nurturing, the comforting, the heart, the feelings, the emotion, and the doing and the putting it into action, right? And I think that this makes us um well, I believe that the patriarchal system is kind of like backwards, in the fact that if more women could be in leadership roles, could lead, we would have a totally different society. And yes, both roles have their place and are absolutely essential. I think that holding this balance as businesswomen, and I want to just encourage my listeners to what you said there about business relationships. You guys, you do not have to be a business owner to be in business relationships, because guess what? Pretty much everything that you do, right? Even if you're a stay-at-home mom, is a business relationship.
Mhm.
Who you're connecting with for your kids, your teachers, your healthcare system, anybody, everybody, and every relationship is in a way a business relationship. So I just want to encourage my listeners to, if you feel like, oh, I can't resonate with that because I don't own a business, it's not true at all. Everything is that relational aspect in which boundaries is essential. And that's why I believe business, the process of business, is one of the most spiritual adventures you can be on.
Absolutely. And you know what? Comes down to your community too and the people around you.
Mhm.
I agree with you that women should be in leadership roles, and I mean we should do it together, because right now
Mhm.
they're so far left, so far right. Like this whole notion of toxic masculinity, I can't even say it. Toxic masculinity is so ridiculous. And of course in the beginning I'm like, I'm a feminist. I'm like, I want equal rights, and then I'm like, we've gone through too far. Like I don't want somebody.
Yeah.
But like, I want, the reason I love my husband is because I said this from day one, and my mom knew I was going to marry him. He treats me like a princess, but he puts me in my place when I need to be put in my place. And I need somebody that's going to call me on my shit.
Yes.
I need somebody that is going to make me the best version of myself, whether I want to hear it or not. Somebody that is also going to be the sensitive side when things aren't going the right way, and like maybe I've made a mistake and I've got to own that mistake, and he's like, it's okay, we'll get through it together, and it's okay. We're all going through this practice we call life, and so to have both sides are so important, and they need to be in balance, and not right now everything's wacky. And so I think that having this foresight to have a voice, to be very cognizant of the decisions that you're making, the people that you surround yourself with, the people that you expose your kids to, and the community that you raise your family with, and the people, like even, with my husband and I, we spend time with other couples, but they have to be other couples that thrive together. They're not the couples that are like nitpicking at dinner or fighting over this or backstabbing. And, like you disrespect your partner and you say rude things in front of people about them. Like I have no desire to be around you, and neither does he. Right.
When,
And so it's like, what are you
when you're
modeling?
describing that picture to me, it just doesn't even make sense in my mind. I'm like, I can't even see that, because it's just such a misalignment. You would never find
Yeah.
like you, or I could never even picture myself being around gossipy couples. I would just be like, yeah, we're not hanging. Well, that would never happen again. That would never happen again. And just to kind of complete that thought that you just had too, which I love, this whole feminist movement. I'm to the point now where I don't want equality. I want harmony.
Yeah.
Harmony in the world, harmony with people. And again, back to the family nucleus, which you talked about, and how precious and sacred it really truly is, and how that really is the model, right? Everything's just like expansions and contractions of each other. It's like the individual and the family nucleus, and then that goes up and out towards this world collective dynamic. And we can see that we're just reflections of this ripple being expanded or contracted in. And we have this beautiful opportunity, like you've already said, to actually be conscious about the ripple that we're creating, and how we can actually create much more than we think. But at the same time, it requires us to kind of center our focus inward in self first, then family, and kind of outward from there, which is a lot of what I'm getting from you today. Okay, I have one last question for you. Um, if if you could debunk some common misconceptions that you think the world or society has about success today, what would that be?
That it's hard. I would want to tell people that you can do it and have fun. You can do it with joy. You can do it with excitement and adventure. That most people focus on the wrong thing. They focus on the outcome. They focus about what success is, right? For me, success is the journey and who I'm becoming, right? And so often we're so busy focusing on that goal up here, where we're going to go and what we're going to make and who we're going to be, who we're going to help and all this kind of stuff. We forget to enjoy who we're becoming in the process. And I think that one of the greatest successes in life, for me anyways, and maybe this doesn't relate to people that have kids, but my greatest success is being an example for my children. And you know what? I'm not perfect. I make mistakes, but how do I overcome those mistakes? How do I say sorry? How do I communicate better? How do I problem solve and use critical thinking? How do we do this together? And who are we becoming in the process to make a bigger impact and a bigger ripple? And that success that people shoot for, they're almost willing to give up everything in the process, and you don't have to. In entrepreneurship, you get to decide. There are no rules. If you want to go to a yoga class every day and you want to go to spiritual retreats and you want to hire business mentors, like, you can live this life however you so choose. Just do it consciously. And it doesn't have to happen in decades. Most people say, oh my God, it's going to take forever. They don't even get started because they're scared of the journey. They're scared of what they have to risk, right? But if you knew that all you had to do is know what is the next right step right now that I have to do to move forward, move my life forward, go in the right direction, that's all you have to know. You don't have to have this big grandiose vision of your life and get there. You'll eventually get there over the decades because time will pass anyways. And it's who you become in the process that matters.
Beautifully said. I don't think I have anything to add to that one. And guys, those of you who are watching this on YouTube, you can really just see that this is, Christina, this is so obviously what you were supposed to do in this lifetime. It oozes out of you because every time I ask a certain question, there's tears that come to your eyes because there's so much passion. And I really just encourage, and I would just ask for you guys to please share this. Please go follow Christina, share her page, because what the world needs most right now is more of this, more and more and more of this. And I think you need more of it. Not you, but my audience. And I need more of it,
Well, thank you.
And so please tell my audience where they can find you.
You can find me on social media, Christina Whiteley, Whiteley, and Christina, like a CH with Christmas. And you can find me on Instagram and TikTok, which is hilarious because my nanny that I have down here who helps us with our Spanish, all of her friends are like, oh, you work for the TikTok girl. I'm like, that is not what I do for a living. So anyways, you can find me at the Christina Whiteley on both Instagram and TikTok, or you can email me, info@ChristinaWhiteley.com. If you ever have questions or you're working through some stuff or you want to go in a different direction in your life, I'm always up for a conversation. I truly love working in that wheelhouse with people who are looking for a solution to the life that they want to live. Because look, you don't have to work and work and work to create a lifestyle. You can make an income around the lifestyle that you desire. And that's really, truly what I'm here to do.
I love hearing that. I really, really love that's perfectly said. Gosh, that's so much there. so much goodness and richness. And I promise to post all of those links, you guys, in the show notes so that you don't have to be like, what did she just say? I will post it for you. Again, just a reminder to please share the show. Remember to subscribe on YouTube and or Spotify if you like to watch the quirky moments of facial expressions here. YouTube's the way to go. And just a reminder too of the next retreat coming up that I'm hosting, Reignite in the Red Rocks, November 7th through 11th in Sedona, Arizona. Please join in the same way that Christina is doing exactly what she's supposed to be doing. I also am doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing, and you can find that same passion there. I love you guys so much. Thank you so much for tuning in. And Christina, thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me. It's a very special conversation. I appreciate it.
Till next time, guys, we'll talk to you very soon.